Thank you. Yes. Lorraine, thank you so much for that. It's an absolute honor, and I need to get some things out of the way right up front. I've been asked at least 10 times so far in the 2 hours that I've been here, so what office are you running for? In fact, there was a lady from Tucson who says, I'm from Tucson, where are you from? I said, I'm from Phoenix. She says, I apologize, I can't vote for you. But I'm so excited to be here because America is in crisis, and we understand that we must rise up together. We must link arms to make something happen. To link arms to stand for the cause of America, to stand for the cause of freedom. And have you ever felt like you're the only sober person in the car and they won't let you drive? That's kind of, I know you feel like this. We're the same people who have the bumper sticker on our car that says, an American voting for Obama is like a chicken voting for Colonel Sanders. But you know, we have to change tactics. We must do things differently. We must go back and start using techniques that were used 200 years ago. Start bringing the conversation back to our charters of freedom, this Declaration of Independence, this Constitution. Because the onslaught from the left tells us that small government folks, like all of us, must compromise. We've heard compromise, compromise, compromise over and over and over the last several months and years. Since when is it fashionable and in style to compromise on the principles of freedom? That's what we're being asked to do. I mean, what really needs to happen is that the left needs to begin compromising. You know what I'm talking about. When is the left prepared to compromise and negotiate on principles revolving around the ATF, the Department of Education, the IRS, all of these things, welfare? Those are the things that we must begin to talk about and begin to pull back because they have been created unconstitutionally. I want you to think about this. There are 250 bureaucracies that have been created through our federal government, and not one of those bureaucracies is accountable to the people. These bureaucracies have been established by stealing power away from the people. And so you see what's happening here. What is going on in this country is that you have individuals in office that are doing what? They're pointing the blame on one of these 250 bureaucracies that they were involved in creating and subtly endorsed by doing nothing about it. So it's easy to stand back and say the IRS did that. That's the Department of Education's problem. It's easy to do that. But what they really need to be doing is pulling back, giving power back to themselves that we initially gave to them, because it was never a part of the American experiment to give entities power when they are not in turn accountable to the people. I want you to understand what's going on, and I'm sure that you ultimately do. What is going on in America and the tactics that are being utilized? We've got to stop compromising on the principles of liberty. Because here's what the other side does. They accuse. They don't want to compromise, they simply accuse because they know that when they're in an offensive posture, they can win the debate. We play defense all too well, and we must stop playing defense. You know what I'm talking about. You know, the last time you were involved in a debate on immigration, how did that debate turn out when they called you a racist? You spent the entire time defending this idea that you're not a racist. That's a very effective tactic that they utilize. Right. And they'll ask you, well, why aren't you for gun control? You must not care about all of these massacres going on our schoolyards throughout the country, and now you go on the defensive. Why aren't you in support of the welfare programs? You must not really care about the poor. Why do you support things like a strong military? You want nuclear war, don't you? These are the types of tactics that are utilized by the other side because they realize that being on the offensive and putting you on defense allows them to control the discussion. We must stop doing this and turn the tables. And we've got to start asking the tough questions. So when we're told that we're the racists, we know that that's one of the most vile accusations that can be made against us. I know that specifically for me. That is a vile accusation. But I will not deal with that accusation because I understand the tactic. We must turn the tables and start to ask them the questions. Well, why do you embrace racist policies? Under this administration, there are more black individuals that are unemployed. You tell me who the racist is. There's more black individuals that experience foreclosure. You tell me who the racist is. Minimum wage policies disproportionately affect minorities more so than the white race. Why do you embrace those policies? Just talk about who the racist is. This is called going on the offensive. Because here's what they want to do. They want to come in and they want to have a debate. And what they do, because they are very, very good at debating and setting the framework for the debate. And so they'll come in and they'll say, you know what, we want to confiscate all firearms. And of course, we don't like that idea. We think that we have a fundamental right to, in fact, defend ourselves and defend against tyranny. And so when the opposition builds, what does the other side do? They say, that's compromise. See, they come in and say, this is what we want, and when we stand back and say freedom's not up for negotiation, they say, well, let's compromise then. And guess what you end up with? Background checks. You end up with bans on certain types of firearms. You end up with limitations on magazine capacities. And then we turn around and say, what happened? It's because we allowed ourselves to compromise on an issue that should have never been compromised. And that's a common tactic that they're utilizing. You know, it's kind of like the thug that comes and takes your kids. And after he takes your kids, he takes your wallet. And then with a glimmer in his eye, he looks back at you as he begins to move along with his kids. He gives you a few dollars back. He gives you a credit card back. And he gives you pictures of his children and says, I really don't need those. Thank you, though. And he walks off with your kids, kidnaps them. And we are sitting back as Americans and saying, you know what? I guess the robbery wasn't so bad, he didn't take everything. See, this is what's going on. And when we look at the compromise, so-called compromise going on in this country, that's precisely what's going on. We say, oh, well, they didn't take everything. We still have a little bit of freedom. Freedom is not up for negotiation. And when you look at the Constitution, I want you to note something very important. The word no or not is mentioned in the first 7 articles 22 times. It's a document that's telling them what to do as well as reminding them what they are only permitted to do. In the Bill of Rights itself, the first 10 amendments, the word no or not, or derivative of that word, is mentioned 24 times. It should be very clear. Certain things may not be infringed upon. And yet we allow these things to be infringed upon through this mechanism of compromise. You know, I thought when we went through this thing with Ted Cruz and Rand Paul and Mike Lee, who I love, and we kept hearing they were not compromising. Well, listen, I think that was a pretty good bargain. As much as I hate to say it, it was a pretty good bargain here. Because they were saying, you know what, we will continue to fund all of these unconstitutional programs, all of these unconstitutional bureaucracies with one exception, Obamacare. That's the one thing we will not. And we were being told we weren't the ones compromising. Wake up, America. We were the ones who were compromising, and yet no one was really making that argument effectively. We've got to make those arguments effectively. Turn the tables, go on the offensive, make it very clear that they've got to start answering the tough questions. They have to start justifying why their alternatives are better. They're not being asked those questions, so they continue to play the game of offense, and we are sitting here playing defense, and our liberties, our Constitution, our Declaration are literally being run over. Excuse the impression, but they're being defecated and urinated upon because they just don't matter to individuals who believe in big government. And it's important to understand the perspective of the other side. The other side does not believe that men and women are born free. And mind you, this is not just a cute soundbite. This is the truth. I have to tell you, I grew up in a family where my father was very liberal. He was as liberal as they come. My mother as conservative as they come. And around the dinner table, can you imagine the conversations we had? They were fantastic, but it was very clear as I talked and listened and debated with my siblings and with my own parents that my father bought into this idea that only government can make men free. That is the progressive mantra, even though they don't say it in those words. Only government can make men free. So when you look back and you listen to someone like Woodrow Wilson say, if you want to understand the Declaration of Independence, don't read the preface. Well, what's the preface? We're born free. He's saying ignore it. And then you look at FDR and he says, you may say that men and women are born free, but deep down you know they are not. And then you hear in 2012, you didn't build that. See, this is progressive mantra that is being laid down upon the American people. Sometimes we don't see what's coming at us. We are being sold a bill of goods that says only government can make you free. Only government can put food on the table. Only government can provide health care. Only government can provide adequate housing. Only government can unleash you from the shackles that you place on yourself simply by being a human being. We disagree with that. But in order to have the debate, we've got to go on the front lines and be aggressive about having this debate. I want to tell you about it. I spent a lot of time on the college campuses. We just finished a 20-day speaking tour out in Kansas and Missouri. I spent some time on the University of Missouri, University of Kansas, Truman State, and Pittsburgh State. And had an absolute blast. I want to tell you a story about a young man that I met on a college campus by the name of Raul, Hispanic. I spent a lot of time with this man. Big burly man. Looked a little bit like a gangster. He had the hat going on, he had the baggy clothes. And I spent significant time with Raul. And the last time I saw him, he told me this, and this was about 4 months ago. He said, Shane, with tears in his eyes, he simply said this, you have saved my life. And I said, Raul, tell me what you mean. He says, Shane, I've been sold a bill of goods, and I have embraced ideas that only government makes me free. And what I didn't realize is that I was literally being enslaved as I depended on what government was providing for me. He says, I have now been made free because I understand the principle of America in my heart and my mind. We need to go after the Rauls on our college campuses, in our high schools, and make them realize that America is truly exceptional, as Madam Governor suggested, and she is right. We are exceptional, and I will not apologize for being an American, and I will not apologize for mistakes we've made. I will stand firm and stand up and defend this idea of American exceptionalism. I will defend the idea that we are exceptional because we can say and believe the things we want to say and believe, regardless of whether or not others may agree. We are exceptional because we subscribe to the equal protection principle. The equal protection principle isn't just a cute soundbite that people talk about over the dinner table. The equal protection principle is a principle that men and women have given their lives to defend, and yet it's being run over as we embrace things like affirmative action programs. It's being run over. America is exceptional because when those individuals board those rickety boats on the shores of Haiti, they risk their lives to go somewhere. And they don't risk their lives to go to Bermuda. They don't risk their lives to go to Jamaica. They don't risk their lives to go to the islands of Turks and Caicos. They don't risk their lives to go to the beautiful Cuban paradise. They risk their lives to come to the United States of America because there's an opportunity to relish in freedom. We are innovative. We produce more, we invent more, we create more than any country in the world. We have 5% of the world's population, yet we create 25% of the world's wealth. We are exceptional. We are exceptional because of our military. Individuals who don't just talk about pledging their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. They're individuals who have done just that. A voluntary military that will stand up and defend the idea of freedom and take an oath to do just that. We are exceptional because of our Bill of Rights, and today I call upon you to stand up and defend this idea that is found in our Fourth Amendment, even though it's you that's not the terrorist. I stand up and ask you to also rise up with me and defend this idea of the Fifth Amendment, even though it's you that's not being accused of a crime. Today I ask you to stand up and defend this idea of the Sixth Amendment, even though it's you that's not on trial. Or the Eighth Amendment, even though it's you that's not being punished. Or the Second Amendment, even though it's you that may not want to possess and carry a firearm. or to stand up and defend the First Amendment, even though you're not Catholic, Protestant, Buddhist, Mormon. We stand up for the principle of freedom because we understand that an injustice somewhere is an injustice everywhere. And we realize that when my neighbor is being persecuted and his freedoms are being taken away, the same thing is happening to me. I must stand up. We must stand up together. I want to leave you with one final thought. I want to take you back to World War II. World War II, the Battle of the Bulge. We were disorganized. It was chaos. And we are literally retreating from the Nazis. Can you imagine this? Our tanks moving down the mountain as the Nazis are in pursuit. And what we did during this time is we called in some of our best. We called in reserves. We called in paratroopers. And as one particular tank is moving up a mountain, imagine this. A man steps out in the middle of the road. 3 days worth of beard growth, kind of scruffy, deep, hollow, sunken eyes, hungry. On one shoulder, a bazooka, in the other hand, an M1. And he stops this tank. And he simply says this to the tank commander. Are you looking for a safe place? Imagine that. Here's a paratrooper stepping out in the middle of the road asking the tank commander, who's driving 30 tons of death down the road, saying, you looking for a safe place? And the tank commander says, I am. And this man says this, in the middle of the road. He says, get behind me. Get behind me, because this is as far as the suckers are going. We must stand up together and link arms. You know, something that we do so often, the men do it, we're much worse. We do something that the other side does we do something that I wish we would adopt from the other side. Because the other side, they unite on a cause. We separate on a difference. We sometimes throw tomatoes at each other. We sometimes ostracize people from our group because we don't like particular views that they have. But if we come together on the foundation of freedom, we can have that debate, and we might disagree on the execution, but we're all fighting for the same cause. And I stand here today, along with you, to pledge my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor to this cause, because I truly, and I hope that this resonates with you in your heart and your mind, and that you stand as well on this principle, that this is as far as the suckers are going to go. No more. No more. Ladies and gentlemen, we will win this battle. Someone told me yesterday at an engagement that we were at, came up to me afterwards and he said, we're going to lose. He said, not on my watch. We will not lose. We will not go down without a fight. We will teach our young people what it means to be an American. We will teach our high school students why America is truly different. We will teach the older generation that we will carry the torch on that they fought so hard to defend. When I look into your eyes, you give me sincerely motivation to move this cause forward, to stand strong in the face of adversity, to go into the lion's den, whether it be Washington, D.C., or onto a college campus, where we are mocked and yelled at and told we're crazy people. I don't really care. All I want to know is if I can really go after and touch the heart of 1 or 2 or 3 or 400 even of those college students. Well, they'll start to reconsider the nonsense that they're being taught on these campuses. We've got a nation to save. This is our nation to save. And as we link arms together, I am convinced this battle will not be lost. It will take time. We will not turn this around overnight. It is going to take time. But I, along with you, want to carry this torch of freedom. because men and women have died for these things, and I will not let their death be in vain. I will stand with them, and I will stand with you for the cause of America, because she is truly worth defending. Thank you so much for having me.